Hey, welcome to the High Performance Man podcast. I am your host, John Fayocavitz. On this show, I interview successful men who have built impressive careers in businesses, founders, CEOs, and senior leaders, and professionals who have operated at a high level for years. We talk about what actually made them successful. The goal is simple: to learn directly from men who have done it so we can apply those insights into our own careers and businesses and lives and continue raising our own standard of performance. Our show is sponsored by the Prime Performance Method. The Prime Performance Method is designed specifically for high-performing men who have achieved success in their careers but feel like their body and energy have taken a hit along the way. I help busy professional men regain strength, lose weight, and feel younger within 8 weeks without long workouts, extreme dieting, or disrupting your demanding schedule. If you are a high-performing man who wants to feel strong and energized as you are successful, message me, John Fayocavitz, on LinkedIn. On today's show, we have Norman Howe, Senior Partner for Validation and Compliance Institute, where he helps pharmaceutical and medical device companies comply with FDA regulations. Welcome to the show, Norman.
John, happy to be here.
Great. Okay, well, let's get started. What's the most important lesson you've learned so far that has helped you become successful in your business?
Well, John, I would say it was not one particular thing. There was a sequence of things, but it
That's
kind of
great.
started. I started my career as a research chemist, and
Wow.
I fell in love with the plant. I got into a pilot plant and I loved the big equipment. I don't ask me why. And I asked the big bosses if I could get into production management, and they complied. They let me do that. And it was wonderful. But my first job in manufacturing, I was a production manager for a small pharmaceutical facility. And we were starting up the plant. We had built it from the ground up. I had a wonderful boss, and he helped me to understand how you create a culture for an organization. And one of the things that he impressed on me was we need to make this product right, and therefore our employees have to feel free to come to us when they see a problem. So we need to create a organization where people don't fear bringing up issues, because we want to find them first before our customers do. So
Right.
incredibly important in the pharmaceutical industry. Okay, well, I'm brand new. I'm not really that familiar with dealing with hourly workers, but my boss told me to do this. Almost the first day after we started up the plant, I get the call that no production manager wants to hear. The shift supervisor on day shift called me up. He says, "Norm, we got a problem." "Oh, what is it?" "Louis dropped a wrench into the blender." "Oh, no." Now, we're not talking about your countertop
Home, I just
blender.
say, I'm sure there
We're
was
talking,
something there. Yeah.
yeah, it's 2 tons of product that's hazardous inside there. And the thing has got a great big agitator on it with a huge motor. And I'm thinking, oh no, it fell in there and was rattling around. And he said, no. He said, we caught it, and we got the motor locked out, and we're fishing the wrench out now as we speak. I breathed a sigh of relief, and I said, how did we find out about this? And he said, Louis, who was the operator at the time, he told us. Great. Well, that's good news. And I said, okay, I want you to get Louis and a couple of maintenance technicians together. Let's meet in the conference room and let's figure out how we can prevent this from happening again. Okay. And I go in there and following my boss's orders, I thanked Louis for reporting it. Okay, Norm, that's a good start. And we sat down, we started thinking about how can we prevent this from happening again? And Louis was the one that came up with the solution. And he said, why don't we have to use that wrench. Why don't we weld a stainless steel wire to that wrench and weld the other end of the wire to that I-beam up there. And that way, if somebody drops the wrench, it's not going to go anywhere. Fantastic. It's simple and it's foolproof. Great. So I said, Louis, we're going to do that. And we're getting ready to break up the meeting. But I could still see Louis was kind of apprehensive about this whole thing. And I thought, I'm going to need to do something else. And John, I'm not a very spontaneous person, but something came over me. My mouth just took over. And I got to take a side here. There was a bar down the street from the plant, Andy's Bar. And people would go there after shift and have a few drinks before they got home. Maybe they went before shift. We didn't ask any. This is a long time ago. Okay. Now, this is something I did. I don't recommend that people do this at home, but this is what happened. Anyway, we're getting ready to break up the meeting. And like I said, I could see that Louis was still apprehensive. And I said, Louis, my mouth just took over. Louis, are you going to be at Andy's Bar after shift today? He says, well, I don't know. I said, well, Louis, if you're going to be there, I'm going to be there. I'd like to buy you a drink. And he says, well, I'll have to check with my wife. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, we didn't have the internet in those days, but that went viral around the plant. And by the time I got over to Andy's Bar, it was completely jam-packed with everybody off of day shift. And it was kind of dark in there. And Louis was there. And I said, Louis, what are you drinking today? He says, well, I'll have a beer. And I turned to the bartender. I said, 2 beers. And I paid for the 2 beers. I handed one to Louis. And John, it was kind of dark in there, but I swear, the minute I handed that beer to Louis, you could see money changing hands in there. And so we drank up, and I had to get someplace else. So I was kind of snaking my way out the door, and I'm kind of walking behind one of our workers. He didn't see me. And I saw him, I heard him turn to his friend and say, I've never seen a place like this. You F up and the boss buys you a drink. And so apparently the message was getting across. But the fantastic thing about it was, and people started doing these little things. They'd come up with these ideas that we called them MacGyvers, to put up around the plant to prevent errors from happening. But really, the payoff was, it was my job from time to time to escort customers around the plant. And sometimes we'd be up in that area where the wrench had been welded to the wire, and they would look at that and they would say, what is that hanging down there like that? And if I was lucky, Louis would be in the area. And I'd say, hey, Louis, have you got a minute? Your customer's got a question about your idea. And you should have seen Louis straighten out as he told the customer about his idea. We sold a lot of product that way because customers know when the employees feel like they have a piece of the ownership of the place.
Exactly. Now, how big is this? Was it a family-owned business? Was it
No, biggest chemical company on earth.
Wow.
BASF. We were in the pharmaceutical division.
But it started from the top. He had to have that vision of what he wanted to do, which creeped down into the other people.
Yeah.
In that big of a company, I'm sure you're talking hundreds of employees, correct? Or thousands?
Well, in that little plant, yeah, but it was the company is all over the globe.
Wow. So it just made him feel like family.
Yeah, it did.
Okay. And knowing, like you just said, that they have a piece of the pie and that the company values their opinion.
Yeah.
just increases the production of anything. I mean, when you feel valued, you're going to come to work with a hop in your step,
Yeah, exactly.
you know?
And it's I mean, for me, it was an eye-opening experience because, like I said, I had been a research chemist before that, and
Right.
I stepped into this environment where I'm managing hourly uh, uh, union employees, and
Wow.
they would come in and they would complain about things. A lot of times there was nothing I could do to help them.
Right.
And I worried about that because, if you can't get along with the union, you're not going to last in management in that kind of environment. But the amazing thing I found was the fact that I would listen to them was, just spend the time and
Yeah.
validate their concern, even though I couldn't do anything because I'd have the union contract on one hand and the company policies on the other, and I couldn't do anything for them in many
Wow.
cases.
That's so are you still, is this, you're still in this company that what year was that?
Oh, this was back in the 70s.
Okay. Are you still in that company?
No, no, I left BASF 20 years ago, and we
Okay. And
formed
now
this
you started
consulting
something
company.
different. Okay.
Yeah, and because I had always had it on in my bucket list to own my own business, and
Okay.
so
So I'm sure you took this experience and brought it over to your own.
absolutely. And what we try to do is bring that to our customers,
Yeah.
and that way, they get the advantage of that. I mean, on the one hand, there's lots of things that FDA makes a pharmaceutical company do from a technical point of view.
Right.
And so we certainly tell them what that is and help them to do that. But underneath it all, it has to rest on a foundation of a culture of trust between management and the employees.
Absolutely. That's awesome, Norm. That's awesome. All right. My next question. What do you think hinders a lot of men today from reaching their full potential?
Oh, uh, I I guess I would say I see a lot of people that really their critical thinking skills are
Okay.
not up to par. And they tend to solve problems from a symptomatic point of view without really getting down to the root cause.
Right. Okay. You see that? I mean, you see that a lot on not just in business, but everything else that we go through life with, critical thinking. Or I have this tough decision, but I don't get down to that root cause of what's caused that.
Yeah, and a lot of it is people are rushed so much they feel uh, it's
Is that
quarterly profits.
doesn't that seem to be our culture today in our country? Everything's
I,
rushed.
it absolutely does. And I mean, it's one thing for a consultant to come in and look at this, and what the problem is, and it's so obvious. But on the other hand, having been in operations where the schedule is everything and you have to get product out the door or you can't pay your employees,
Right.
we understand completely why you feel rushed.
Right. Exactly. Okay.
And
Perfect.
and I think uh, it's hard to, in that kind of environment, people can burn themselves out. And you
Well,
have to think about
yeah. This goes right
how,
into my next question. It seems like you read my next question was okay. It's
okay, go ahead.
for the most men on the road to business or professional success, other areas of their life get sacrificed. What has been one of the areas of your life that has suffered, if it has, if anything has, but where would you like to be successful now too?
Well, it, it, I think that you can leave yourself out of the equation, and you have to as you get older, and this is certainly a process that I went through, that you have to learn what's important for you. And if you can't do that, it's hard to be nice to other people when you're cheating yourself.
Right.
And so now I've been a lover of sports ever since I was a child. Never been very good, but I always loved playing. And I remember I told my wife one time, I joined the company tennis league, and I told her I've got to go play tennis because I have to take time for myself. And then she found out that I was awarded for the league, the one with the best attendance at the thing, and that was not a good day.
So what area do you think, I mean, when you did, what, you've been in business, what, for 20 years with your own business and 20 years, I guess, with the company? Is that what, I mean, how many years?
Yeah, yeah, that's about right.
And you've probably seen different aspects of your life sacrificed at different times. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it, you have to have balance. I mean, and one thing I do is I try to have a schedule where I go and work out on a regular basis, and having that discipline to do that is hard. One thing I do, I don't know if anybody would find this useful, but when I go to the gym, I always save a podcast or something. Like I said, oh, hey, the next edition of the Performance Man podcast is out. I want to listen to it. And then I have to say, no, I can't listen to it until I get on the treadmill.
There you go. So that's where you listen to your podcast when you do your workout, your cardio or whatever after you work out.
Yeah, right.
Yep, and that's
Yeah.
the proper way to do it. That's great. Okay. All right. Question here that gets people to think a little bit. Where do you find yourself most at peace?
Oh, wow. Uh,
I
most at
mean,
peace. I would say sitting, reading an interesting book, getting
okay,
lost in a good book.
okay. Now, do you have, again, I like to know what men, how they operate with, do you have a morning routine of some sort at all, or do you meditate in the mornings or anything like that, or get up at a certain time? And
I tend to have a pretty regular routine. I get up, and get breakfast, read the paper, and then sort of ease into a work day.
okay. And then when would you take the time to read the book at night?
Yeah, yeah, at night. Or I read the book. Oftentimes I get in bed and read the book,
Okay.
which can be problematic because it depends on the book. And
You could
if
go
it's
all
like
night.
yeah, I'm not going to go to sleep, But if I'm reading, sometimes I'll be reading the book and I'll read 3 pages of the book and then fall asleep. The next day, I go back and the last 2 pages I don't even understand because I was so sleepy. So
Uh,
it's like 3 forward and 2 back.
so it takes you a while to finish a book.
It takes me a while, yeah.
Well, that's good that you don't do it in bed. A lot of people take their phones to bed, which is the worst thing to do. Okay, before
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
before you go to bed, that blue light just doesn't. That's not conducive for sleeping sound.
Yeah, right.
Okay. All right. Then the last thing, Norm, it would be if you were to give one piece of advice, okay, to other men that are on this journey for achieving success, what would that be?
Oh, I don't don't be afraid to change up what you're doing, I would say. Be available to yourself to change a career.
Yeah.
Um, And I've done that at least 3 times, and it's really kept me fresh, and it was the right thing to do, but it's scary.
Right. And I think that's one of the main things that, people starting out in businesses or trying to be successful is that fear. Okay. And that holds them back so bad.
Yeah, right.
Okay. That they're afraid to make that choice of going to another career. You may have to quit your job and not get income for a month or 2 months or 3 months, but what you were doing wasn't making you happy, but it's something that you had to do and have to do to make what I always think about is mental health.
Right, right. I mean, I don't care how much money you're making. If you're miserable doing it,
It's not worth it, right?
yeah, right.
It's not worth it. Okay. Well, Norm, this has been great. Okay. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I want to thank you so much for taking the time. Your insights, your thing was great. Our audience were looking forward to listening to this. And thank you so much once again. Okay. And as a
Oh, I
reminder for
appreciate it.
everyone listening, the show is brought to you by the Prime Performance Method, where I help high performing men rebuild their strength and energy and confidence without sacrificing their careers. If you are ready to feel as strong in your body as you are in your business, okay, message me at John Fayocavitz on LinkedIn. Until the next episode, perform strong in all areas of your life.